Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're going to be counting down the top 10 best cards within Shrouded Fable. Shrouded Fable is coming out in almost a week, so I decided, well, let's do a top 10 video ranking the best cards in the set. The set is a little bit smaller than a normal set. It is a mini set, but there are a decent amount of playable cards within the set that will impact the World Championships this year, as the World Championships is a few weeks away, and Shrouded Fable will be legal for the World Championships. And there are some decent cards in the set that I think will impact the meta, so I decided to do a top 10 best cards within the set. Let me know what you think of the top 10 list down below. Did I miss any cards? Was the order out of order? Let me know what you think of it down below. And if you're new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 16,000 subs. And if you go on to enjoy the video, leave a like and all that good stuff. And yeah, I think without further ado, let's get into the top 10 ranking. All right, starting things off at the number 10 spot, I've given it to the brand new supporter, Janine Secret Technique. Now, this supporter is going to be really good with the Loyal 3 EXs that you're going to be getting within this set. Of course, it has the effect where you can choose up to 2 of your dark Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, search deck for a basic dark energy and attach it to that Pokemon. And if you attach energy to your active Pokemon with this card, that Pokemon is now poisoned. This will synergize really well with the Okidogi EX we are getting in this set. Okidogi is definitely a very strong card, and the best card for it is Janine Secret Technique. The other crazy thing about Janine Secret Technique is it is basically going to be a brand new energy acceleration supporter for dark Pokemon. Now, I don't know how good this is going to be in other dark decks. Like, I don't know if this is good with Roaring Moon EX, because Sada's Vitality is better. Janine does get you dark energy into play, but that's all it does. There is no draw effect. It's not like Sada or Melanie or Welder or Gardenia's Vigor. Any of these draw supporters that also energy accelerate are not the same. So, unfortunately, Janine is not the most insane card on the planet. It doesn't draw you cards. And I think that is the main issue with it. It's still a pretty solid card, and it's really good with the Loyal 3, and I did want to include it within this video regardless. And at the number 9 spot, we got Xerosic's Plan. This card is definitely going to be a pretty annoying card in the format. It's got the effect your opponent discards cards from the hand until they have 3 cards in their hand. So if you're somebody who likes to play Lost Box or even Gardevoir or heck, even Snorlax, this card is going to be a pretty annoying card to deal with. Now, it's not the greatest supporter ever, and honestly, looking at it, I don't know how good it actually is. Compared to a card like Eerie, or even to other Disruption supporters, I'm not too sure Xerosic's Plan is going to be a very popular card, and that's why it's a little bit lower on the list. It's a very strong effect. Like, playing this against something like Lost Box is going to do a ton of damage. It seems like Pokemon really does not like Lost Box anymore because of some of the new cards in the set. Xerosic's Plan is definitely one of them. I don't think this card is going to completely dominate the format. It's not going to be insanely popular. There are going to be some decks that will play it, and it is definitely a decent card to have when playing against a deck like Snorlax, because you can immediately force them down 2-3 cards. This card definitely has potential to see play as a counter to Snorlax, but there are other Snorlax counters already in this set already, so I'm not sure how good this card actually is. It might be a one-of in some control-style decks, maybe a Charizard control deck or a Pidgeot control deck might play this, but I'm not too sure every deck is going to play it. I don't think it's as good as something like Eerie, because you actually don't get to see their hand, and your opponent also gets to choose what they want to discard, so they could literally just get rid of all bad cards, keep good cards. Who knows? It's a bit of a riskier card, in my opinion. That's why it's a little bit lower on the list. Still a pretty strong supporter when used at the right moment and used in the right matchup. And over a year later, we are finally getting another new United Wings card. And this one's actually going to be very relevant. Of course, we got a brand new Dartrix. Now, this card is actually really good because it's going to make United Wings a potential good deck in the format. It's basically just another United Wings card you can play in your deck. Now you have even more damage potential. I think you could do up to 320 damage now with all the United Wings in the discard using Ditto to copy the attack. The other good thing with Dartrix is that it's a grass Pokemon, and with Charizard looking to be the BDIF in the format, well, having a grass attacker that can one-shot it as a single prizer for 1 energy definitely seems really good. United Wings is definitely going to be a deck people are going to look out for, but there are a few issues. I mean, stuff like Sableye and especially Dragapult still exists. I think Dragapult's actually still pretty popular in Japan right now. So, unfortunately, I don't think United Wings will ever be a top-tier deck, but I do think that it will actually be something people will play now because of Dartrix. Not only can you do up to 320 damage, but now you have a way to hit for weakness against Charizard. And if you're somebody who likes to play United Wings, I would definitely say get all your United Wings cards back out of your binder, put them into a deck, and get ready to stock up on a couple Dartrixes, because this card is definitely going to make United Wings a good deck. All right, next up here at the number 7 spot, we got the brand new item tool card, Binding Mochi. This card is going to make poison combos a whole lot stronger. With the effect, the attacks of the poison Pokemon this card is attached to do 40 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Plus 40 more damage is a lot of damage to do. Now, the downside is you do have to use this with a poison combo, so you have to poison your own active Pokemon, but there are ways you can actually do that. One of the main ways could be with the brand new Janine Secret Technique card that we looked at earlier in this video. That self-poisons your own Pokemon. There's also Brute Bonnet, which I think is the easiest option. Brute Bonnet with an Ancient Booster Capsule poisons both active Pokemon, so theoretically that's plus 50 damage because your opponent also gets poisoned. Plus, you can use Binding Mochi with the new Pecharunt EX with Dark Pokemon, which can also poison them. Yeah, Binding Mochi looks to be really, really good, and I'm sure somebody's going to find out some good combos for it. I've even seen Sumless in Japan playing Charizard EX with Binding Mochi, because we all know Charizard's a really strong card, but when you can force it to do plus 40 damage pretty early on in the game, it's pretty good. That's almost like a mini maximum belt, which is what makes this card very scary. I think it's a very powerful tool card that could see quite a bit of play if used properly. And like I said, with all the different poison combos in the format, it is actually possible to take big advantage of Binding Mochi. I don't know, number 7 maybe could be a little too low on the list for how good this card actually is, but I do think Binding Mochi will see a fair amount of play, and I think there are some really strong combos you could play this in. Also, it fits really well in the Okidogi deck, of course, so there is that too, not just in Charizard, but you can also play with like Okidogi, so definitely keep your eye on Binding Mochi, and definitely stock up on a few of them if you haven't already. Next up, we got the brand new Night Stretcher item card, a small recovery card that actually seems to be pretty beneficial to have within the format. The main benefit of it is because, well, it's not as good as our Super Rod or Orne Rod was. This card does allow you to put a Pokemon or an energy card directly into your hand, which is pretty good. I mean, sometimes with Super Rod, you have to combo it with a Pokemon search card, like an Ultra Ball or something, or a Nest Ball. Night Stretcher just puts either a basic Pokemon or a basic energy, which is kind of insane. Putting any Pokemon or basic energy back into your hand is kind of crazy. And while you can only put one back, it's not like you can get multiple back. That can still get a lot of value because the thing goes right into your hand, which is pretty darn good. This is pretty good in a lot of different decks. I think a lot of decks can get a lot of value out of Night Stretcher. One of the big decks that comes to mind could be something like the Lost Zone decks. I think Lost Box is really going to love this card because you can recover, Sableye, Radiant Charizard could be good with this card. Night Stretcher definitely will see a lot of play, and it's definitely a card you probably want to pick up a few copies of when it comes out with Shrouded Fable, because this card will see play. It's a very useful card, and some decks can take big advantage of being able to put either a Pokemon or a basic energy card directly back into their hand. All right, into the top 5 now, and we have our first EX card here, and that is going to be Okidogi EX. I think this card is going to be a very strong new big basic beat stick deck. Okidogi does have the attack Crazy Chain that does 130 damage, and if this Pokemon is poisoned, this attack does 130 more damage. So if your own Okidogi is poisoned, you get to do 260 damage, which is pretty ridiculous numbers to hit. On top of that, you can combine this with Binding Mochi, which of course we just looked at, to do even more damage. There's poison modifiers in the format like Radiant Sneasler and also Perilous Jungle, which lets you even add more damage to Okidogi's power. And of course, this card is really synergistic with all the Dark Energy Acceleration in the format, like Dark Patch, and of course the new supporter, Janine Secret Technique. Okidogi looks to be one of the big basic beat stick decks. Will it be better than Raging Bolt and Roaring Moon and Miraidon? It's possible. This card definitely does rival Raging Bolt in terms of raw power. Well, another thing that makes Okidogi so strong is its monstrous 250 HP for a basic Pokemon. That is kind of insane. This thing has 250 HP. It is not getting KO'd super easily. This card is extremely bulky and is definitely going to see play as a big basic deck. And it can also be played with the other loyal 3 EX cards. We are going to look at a few of them very soon. Spoiler alert, but the other EXs definitely do synergize nicely with Okidogi. And there's a lot of brand new cards in the set that make Okidogi a lot stronger. In my opinion, this is the standout attacking EX from this brand new set. I think Okidogi will be a nice big new archetype to look out for when Shrouded Fable drops. All right, next up here, we got Pecharunt EX, which in my opinion is one of the more underrated EXs in the set. This card actually has a lot of utility within the format and can actually fix a lot of decks' issues, and it's all because of its ability controlling chains. Once you're in your turn, you may switch one of your bench Dark Pokemon, except any Pecharunt EX with your active Pokemon. If you do, your new active Pokemon is now poisoned. So Pecharunt does, of course, poison your new active. You can combine this with Okidogi EX to poison it, but this card also has a lot of value with cards like Charizard EX, which I think is a big partner for Pecharunt. Charizard with Pecharunt seems kind of smart because you can use Pecharunt not only to give you a free switch effect, which actually is really good against Snorlax, and also you get to poison the Charizard, so you can then use Binding Mochi. So I think Pecharunt is very strong for that reason alone. And there's a lot of good dark Pokemon you could play with Pecharunt. I've seen stuff like Morpeko, which has a free retreat cost. There's a Weavile, which I think if it's brought into the active spot or something, you can gust something up on the bench. There's Radiant, or not Radiant, there's Sneasler V, I should say, which has a free retreat and can use Forest Seal Stone, making Arven even stronger. There's a lot of uses for Pecharunt, and it's also really good with Okidogi EX because it's also got an okay attack, Irritating Burst, which does 60 damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. So much like Charizard EX, this card does get stronger the more prizes your opponent takes. So this card is definitely going to be very, very strong. And there's a lot of different switching combos that Pecharunt can abuse, and of course it does have some potential with Charizard EX and Okidogi. Even some other niche stuff like Palafin can play this card. I mean, there's just a lot of ways to play Pecharunt, and I think Pecharunt is going to be a very strong new card in this format. All right, into the top 3 now. We have Kyurem, the big bad anti-Lost Box card. Lost Box's main op, it's Boogeyman. All because of that ability, Anti-Plasma. If your opponent has any card in their discard pile with colorless in its name, this Pokemon's Frost attack can be used for a single colorless energy, which is kind of bizarre considering its attack requires 2 water, 2 metal, and a colorless energy. 5 energy. That's a lot of energy. This card is not getting powered up very easily. I mean, at face value, it could work in like a Mirage Gate based deck, but the main way we're going to play Kyurem is, of course, as a tech card within Regidrago V-Star. Regidrago V-Star genuinely might be one of the best decks in the format in the Shrouded Fable meta because of it gaining Kyurem. Now, Kyurem is obviously going to be really good against Lost Box in general, but there is obviously the downside of your opponent benching Manaphy against you, and then Kyurem's not as good, or if any decks are going to play that brand new support or Colress card, then maybe this card is going to be, better. But for the most part, this card is just a giant upgrade to Regidrago V-Star. Because now when you're playing against Regidrago, you need to put Manaphy down, because otherwise, Kyurem is just going to obliterate your board. Now, I've also seen Regidrago V-Star decks using Kyurem with Prime Catcher and canceling Cologne. Especially when you have access to Regidrago's Legacy Star V-Star power, it's actually not that hard to pull off the combo. The downside of Drago copying Kyurem is, well, they can copy it for the 3 energy. You do have to discard those 3 energy. So Kyurem definitely can be a very big game-winning card within Regidrago, but can also hurt you because sometimes you have to get rid of all your energy, and then you have to energy switch off the Ogre Pawns back onto your Drago. But I think you do get a lot of value in Kyurem in Regidrago, and it's a giant upgrade to that deck. Not to mention, if for whatever reason Lost Box becomes insanely popular again, there is now an anti-Lost Box card in the format in the form of Kyurem. This card is crazy, and it's just kind of ridiculous how good this card actually is going to be. And I mean, if you're ever going to play that brand new Supporter Colress card, well, you gotta watch out for Kyurem. This card is nuts, and I mean, if we don't get Bench Barrier back, I'm just saying this card could get a little out of hand. All right, and into the top 2, and at the number 2 spot, we got Fezandipiti EX. I'm a big fan of this card, and I think it's got a lot of potential to be one of the most useful support Pokemon in the game. It's basically a reprint of an old Oricorio GX card, which saw a lot of play, all thanks to its ability here. Once during turn, if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you may draw 3 cards. You can't use more than one of this ability per turn, so you can't have like 2 Fezaandipitis in play and draw +6. But drawing +3 cards every time someone gets knocked out is ridiculously good. In fact, this card has immediately replaced Bibarel within Charizard decks now, because now they can use Fezandipiti as a mini draw engine, and it's not as immediate as having to have a Bibarel set up, and Fezandipiti is very strong due to its ability. I just think the ability is really, really good. There's so many decks that can take advantage of it. Even smaller decks, like I think Lost Box can play Fezandipiti now. Regidrago can play it. Like, quite literally any deck can play this card. It's just that useful of an ability. Being able to draw +3 cards is absurd. It's good against Iono. It's good against Unfair Stamp. It's just a very strong ability. And even, depending on what you're playing, you can theoretically attack with Fezandipiti's Cruel Arrow attack, which doesn't require any dark energy. It just does 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Sometimes that can actually make a difference in a match. You never know. But yeah, Fezandipiti EX, in my opinion, is a very strong support card because it's a reprint of a very strong support Pokemon from back in the day that saw quite a bit of play in the meta, and Fezandipiti is going to do the same thing. So this is definitely a card you 100% want to get your hands on, because I am predicting this card is going to see play in quite a bit of decks during this card's life cycle. All right, and at the number 1 spot, I'm going to be giving this to Dusknoir / Dusclops. Both of these 2 cards have immediately put Charizard EX right back into BDIF status, all thanks to their really strong ability, Cursed Bomb. Once you're in turn, you may put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If you place any damage counters in this way, this Pokemon is knocked out. Dusknoir does the same thing. However, you get to put 13 damage counters on a Pokemon over 5, which is kind of insane. Now, the downside is you knock yourself out, which it is a pretty big downside, right? Giving your opponent a free prize card is never really all that good, but in Dusclops and Dusknoir's case, the amount of value you get out of its abilities is just insane. Basically, with Charizard, you can not only now force your opponent to take a prize, which makes Charizard's Burning Darkness even stronger, but you also get to put an extra 5 damage counters on that Pokemon. Dusclops alone makes Charizard ridiculously broken. I mean, Dusknoir's really good in Charizard too, but Dusclops specifically is nuts. There's a lot of other combos you could use these with. I mean, these could be good with other spread archetypes. Dragapult EX, Sableye, Lost Mine come to mind. Those 2 cards, if somebody can figure out a good list that can abuse Dusknoir and Dusclops, those 2 cards get even stronger. Yeah, these cards are just really good. And, I mean, the fact that they just made Charizard BDIF again out of nowhere is insane. I mean, Charizard's a pretty good deck right now in our current meta, but Gardevoir is the king of the format. But these 2 cards are now going to completely turn Charizard right back into the BDIF. It can abuse damage placements like it's never been able to do before. It can manipulate the prize trade like it's never been able to do before. It seems like Charizard just gets a massive buff with this set because of Dusknoir, Dusclops, even cards like the Pecharunt and the Fezandipiti, Binding Mochi. All these cards are going to make Charizard even stronger, and Dusknoir and Dusclops are, in my opinion, the best cards within the set. They're the ones, in my opinion, that are making the most amount of impact within Japan right now. They're the 2 cards that are going to have the most impact going into the World Championships. Even if Charizard with Dusclops/Dusknoir doesn't win the World Championships, that doesn't mean these cards are not going to make a massive impact, because they are going to make an impact. I mean, if you're somebody going to the World Championships and you're looking to play something, you need to keep Dusknoir, Dusclops in mind, and you have to have a strategy when playing against Charizard due to how strong these cards are in the format. But yeah, that'll be it for me here on today's video with the top 10 best cards in Shrouded Fable. I guess honorable mentions to the new Ace-Spec Stadium, the new Culver Supporter, and Kingdra EX. Those are the 3 honorable mentions. I didn't think they were good enough to make the list, but they would theoretically be 11, 12, and 13 on this ranking. But I think these are the best cards in Shrouded Fable. And Shrouded Fable, well, it isn't a giant set. It's a bit of a holdover set until we get Stellar Miracle in September. The set does have enough fun, new, strong cards that are going to make the format a little bit different than the format we are in right now. And, I mean, get ready, folks. We might be in another Charizard S-tier format. Just we'll have to see on that one. But yeah, if you all enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. Help me in the road to reaching 16K subs, and I'll catch you on the video. Let me know what you thought of the top 10, and bye-bye.